Okay, hopefully you got some recorded sounds in your Ableton. You can just have it laid out like this, so it doesn't have to be on separate tracks. You can just have it all in here. We're going to split this up anyway. Alright, first thing I'm going to work on is my drum beat. So I'm going to start ripping apart this recording and just taking samples from it. So to start things off, I am going to create a MIDI track down here. Then I'm going to go to my instruments and just throw in a simpler. So I've got an empty simpler now. And what I'm going to do is take that sound that I made, it was kind of like a kick. Yeah, that one there. And I'm going to double click the MIDI track. And then I'm just going to drag this sample. So make sure you've got the sample clipped properly. But once you drag it in, you'll be able to edit it anyway. And then just drag it straight into your simpler. And what's going to happen is you're actually going to see your entire recorded track. So if you only wanted to see this kick down here, obviously you can just zoom in, but what we're going to do is actually consolidate this first. So I'm just going to make sure I've got the whole kick, or my kick sound. So I've got it there. Just make sure warping's off as well. We don't need to warp any of this stuff. Now I did change my tempo because I wanted to make a slower track. So make sure you do that as well to suit whatever kind of music you're making. I think I'm going to go for more of a hip hop kind of vibe with this one. Okay, so we need to consolidate this one. So that's Command or Control J. And we'll consolidate it. Now it's its own audio track, its own audio clip. There's no other information in there, so it doesn't have the whole recording in there. So if we just delete this simpler, and then drag this sample in, we don't even need to throw in a simpler, we can just drag it in. Now we just get this kick sound. So if I hit it on my keyboard, make sure my keyboard's on. I'll just drag this start point so that when I press the key, it's a little more on the beat. And now I can pitch it up and down. I'm going to set it to one shot. I want it to be like a drum kick. And then I'm going to just transpose it down in here. Alright. Obviously it doesn't sound too great just yet. What we're going to do is put an EQ on it. And I'm just going to get rid of those highs actually. So I'm just going to use a low pass. Okay, I've just fiddled around with it a bit. I turned on warp, set that to complex, and just pitched it down a few semitones. Just so we get a little bit more bass out of it. Okay, I'm going to add a saturator to this as well. I'm going to do it before the EQ actually. Might just mess around with these a little bit. Alright, I'm just going to get rid of that tail there as well. We don't want it to reverb out, just a kick. And just crank this up a little bit, the fade out, just so it's smoother. Okay, so I've got our kick. I'm going to rename this kick so I know what it is. Now let's make another MIDI track. I'm sure you know the shortcut for that by now, or you should. I'm not going to say it. Let's get a hi-hats. So I had a... There. Those little clicks. So I like this bit. I want one of these sounds. I'm just going to drag over these And I'm going to hit Command E to split the clip. And then I'm going to hit Command J to consolidate it. So I'm going to double click on this empty MIDI clip again. We've got our consolidated clip here. We like this, and I'm just going to drag it in. And there we go, we got a hi-hat. I'm just going to get rid of this second one. Change it to one shot. It's probably not a lot that I need to do to this actually. Sounds quite nice. Maybe just throw an EQ. Get it a little more clicky. I'll worry about these other effects in a second. I'm just gonna get it sounding close first. Alright, I like that. Gonna change this to hat. So this is a little different to how we would do it with a drum rack. You can still technically use a drum rack, but I'm just doing it this way just because I find it a little bit easier. So I'm going to have all my instruments separately. Got my kick, my hi-hat. Now let's get some claps. Okay, so I like that one. Just consolidate this one, drag it in, drag it into my empty MIDI clip, and then just narrow it down to this one clap. And when you're creating your own samples, just make sure the start point's pretty close to the beginning of the waveform there, just so when you press down on your key, the sound happens close to instantly. But you don't want to actually chop off any of the beginning of the waveform. Okay, that's one clap. So I'm going to do this for the rest of my sounds. I'm probably going to skip the video here, but feel free to pause it if you want to do this to all your sounds. It's just going to be a little boring. I'm just going to pretty much repeat the process. I'm not going to do any processing on them. I'll just get them all separated out first, and then I'll come back and process them starting from the clap. Okay, I've gone in and created a few more simplers with some samples I had. What I'm going to do, I'm not going to use this anymore, but I'm not going to delete it just in case I need some original sounds. Otherwise, if you delete it, it's gone forever. So I'm just going to turn it off, minimize it, and just throw it up the top here so it's out of the way. So I got my kick, I got my hat, and I found this low hat. Got this clap, perk 1, perk 2, shaker. I just looped it in classic mode. Just that little rustling of that plastic thing. And then I got clap 2 down here. I might just bring this up to clap 1. Alright, now we've got our drums. We're going to make a little beat. So I'm just going to do like a 4-bar loop, and then I'm going to repeat that over and over. So we'll start with our kick. So I want to use something down there. So we'll just do this over 1 bar. I'm going to repeat this. I'm going to insert MIDI clip, Command-Shift-M. The note that I want to use is actually C2. Change this to 16ths. Okay, just focus on 1 bar for now, and then I'll... Let's add in our hi-hats. Same thing, create a MIDI clip. Let's change this to 8th notes. And I'm just going to duplicate this. Just bring these down a bit, just starting to clip a bit there. Okay, put my low hat in. Let's put in some claps. I'm just going to put these on the 2 and 4, C3. Same thing with clap 2. I'm just going to copy that clip down to here. I'm just going to offset them slightly as well. Actually, I'll put clap 1. I'm just going to bring it forward just a touch so it's just off the grid. Okay, now let's see what this perk is. Alright, something like that. Put in a MIDI clip, put it on 16th notes. And we'll put in this percussion as well. 16ths again. And let's put in our shaker down here. Okay, I'll just mess around with the looping and stuff a bit. Found this cool little section which works well as a loop. It's going to be sitting in the background anyway. Okay, so we processed our kick, we processed the hat. These claps are a little weak at the moment, so what I'm going to do is group those claps. Now they're grouped, and I'm going to put a saturator on them. And then I'm going to put a reverb on them as well. So we've looked at most of this in the reverb. What I'm actually changing here is now that we know about filters, the reverb itself has its own little filter. So this is just filtering the reverb itself. So I just want a bit more of those high-end frequencies on this one for the clap. Okay, let's just fix this guy before he gets too annoying. I'm just going to take an EQ. Pretty much going to get rid of everything below there. Just really want it to sit in the back. I'm going to put a bit of reverb on it as well. And I'm going to process these guys as well. Bit of overdrive, a little bit of reverb as well. Turn down this dry wet a bit. And I'm going to do a similar thing on this one. Alright, that's our little 1-bar loop. I'm just going to duplicate this. And these are all sounds that were created from ourselves that I just recorded into the mic. Okay, let's add in our guitar that we recorded as well. If you want to put in a melody and you don't have an audio interface or you don't have an instrument to record, you could even experiment with your voice and just try creating some different notes with your voice, and then you can layer those and actually create chords, and yeah, you can do some really cool stuff with that as well. I'd probably show you guys, but I really don't want to embarrass myself too much because I cannot sing. So I'm going to add this guitar in. So I'll just chop this up to get a melody that I want. So I think it was this one here. Same thing with this. I'm not going to turn this guitar into a simpler or anything like that. I'm not going to pitch it up and down too much. I kind of like how it sounds. I'm just going to do some processing on this track itself. But I am going to make sure that it's on the beat. So I'm just going to go into these clips here, just drag these around. I don't want that last little bit there. And then I'll bring this back. Just turn off warping as well for these. If you want to turn off warping for multiple, you can shift select multiple clips, and then you can just hit the warp button and it'll turn it all on, turn them all on or off. This one here, actually I am going to warp it because it was a little off beat. This I want to be here. And here it's starting to get a bit artifacted, some weird little crackles in there because it's on beats, so let's switch this to complex. I'll get this on the beat as well. So I know I turned off warp, but if your timing wasn't perfect, you can come in, turn on warp again, and just fix up those little notes so they hit on the beat. Little imperfections are fine though. Okay, so I like that. I'm going to drag this over onto our beat. Actually, first I'm going to process this a little bit. We haven't used the chorus yet, so I'm going to use the chorus. And as I said, this works amazingly on guitar because they were pretty much meant to be together. So it just brings out a lot of extra niceness. We can try a little bit of overdrive as well. Probably something around there, not too drastic. Then I'm going to put an EQ on it as well. Just and then some reverb. Get it nice and spacey. Let me just group these audio effects. So you can group audio effects as well. All you need to do is shift select over the audio effects that you want. So I'm going to click this first one. Then I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to click on the last one here, so the reverb. Now you can see they all highlight blue. I'm going to hit Command G, same as with the tracks. And now that's grouped it. So I've got an audio effect rack, which I've created now, which involves all these effects. So if I want to turn these, I can minimize these as well, just by hitting that button there. Now it just doesn't clog up your space, your real estate. So we can open them back up with this. And we can also turn all of these effects on and off at once by using our little rack device on and off here now. So you can clean up this section as well using audio effect racks and just grouping things together. So this was the dry signal, straight from my guitar into Ableton. And then I'll turn on the effects. Okay, so I'm going to unsolo this now and we'll see how it's sounding with our beat. I'll just copy this over. Alright, let's see what we got. Cool. It wouldn't take much more to actually create this into a full, proper track, full length track. We'd probably just need to create a few more different sections, mix up the beat a little bit. And then one thing we are missing is a bass. So I don't have a bass guitar. And it's really hard to create basses with something like your voice. You can do it, for sure. But what I'm going to do is break the rules a bit for this. And I'm just going to insert a sub bass. So I think I showed you guys this early on in Operator here. I'll just type in hip hop. There's this really nice sine wave bass. I'm just going to drag that onto the MIDI track. And then I'm going to put some notes in. So now we're blending our own original samples with some Ableton instruments. If I had a bass guitar, I probably would record this straight in, because it'd be much better for this exercise. But for now, I'm just going to use this sub bass. Okay, that really fills out the track, because there was definitely a big gap there that was missing, and which was the bass. So I just added that in with the hip hop instruments. This track is pretty much screaming for vocals now. Unfortunately, I cannot sing, so I'm not going to try and embarrass myself. But what I'm going to do is actually throw in, pretending that I can sing. So I'm going to find a sample and then we'll chuck that in. Okay, so I found this vocal effect which works really nicely. I just found it on Splice. I did break the rules because I said we were going to make all our own original samples, but I couldn't leave this track without a little something extra. So I'll just put in this vocal here, I'll show you how it sounds. Alright, this track is now begging for some lyrics. It's quite a mellow, down-tempo, hip-hoppy sort of a track, but it's quite cool. I like it. I might actually save this project. Yeah, it's just begging for some lyrics now. That's pretty much going to cover it for this video. If you've been following along, I hope you've been enjoying the process of creating your own samples from scratch. So actually using our own original sounds instead of going out there and finding sample packs and that sort of thing. So this is to show you that it is possible to make a really cool sounding track from some really, really basic sounds. So if we look at what we started with, it was honestly just some random noises with my mouth and then just hitting some things on my desk. And like somehow this turned into this kick, which works quite well. And then we processed all those sounds to make some drums that sound quite decent. So this was just an example of how you can do that. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I hope you had as much fun as I did of going through this process. This really is where you can really come up with some magic, and this is where music production comes alive, because you can really throw in a lot more creativity this way rather than just going out. Nothing wrong with going out there and getting samples. I've created many tracks purely from samples, and I definitely don't do this as often as I should, but I am going to start doing it a lot more. So always keep this in the back of your mind, that this is available, this technique, that you can use your own sounds and you can make them sound cool. Even if they don't sound great from where we started off, like those didn't sound great what we recorded, but with some processing you can make them sound quite decent. So just play around with it, experiment with different sounds and just recording different things, processing them in different ways, and see what kind of magic you can come up with. So that was it for this video. What we're going to look at in the next video is just some basic vocal processing. So as a producer or a songwriter, more often than not you're going to come across vocals in the end. Even if you're just looking to be a beat maker, I'm sure there's going to be a time where you're going to have to deal with vocals in one way or another, so we're going to cover that in this course as well. I'm not going to go too in-depth on vocal processing, just enough to get you by to start with, which should give you a good fundamental basis in working with vocals. So that wraps it up for this video. Just keep experimenting with this. You can have a lot of fun with it. And yeah, take as much time as you need, no rush, and then come back to the next video when you're ready.